Yet?
Yes, I'm here, Holly. I'm just renaming myself now.
Okay. Good job.
Okay, I see the recording's going. It's a little after 10, so welcome everyone. I'd like to call to order the Whatcom County Stakeholder Advisory Committee for, let's see, it's November 17th, 2022. And welcome everyone. And I'd like to, I'll turn this on. I'd like to thank all those that attended the town hall meeting we had Tuesday night. It was a great turnout. We ran out of speakers and ran out of time at the same time. So that's interesting. So, so it looked like our planning was pretty close. But anyway, welcome to today's SAC meeting number 7. I'm going to turn it over to Holly to get us rolling. So thanks, everyone.
Yay. Thank you. Thanks, Barry. And I agree. Thank you to everybody who showed up on Tuesday. That was great. I was asked by a SAC member to please read the land acknowledgement again for our meeting, so I'm going to do that. So here we go. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. So thank you all. This work is so important. I felt on Tuesday night just hopeful and also, I don't know, just solid in the importance of this work that we're doing together. So just really grateful for the SAC and grateful that everybody's taking the time to do our very best. So thank you all. We have a super agenda today. So Kathy, are you ready? I think you've renamed yourselves, it looks like. Yeah, good job. Okay. So we've got today, I'm gonna just go through the agenda here and then kind of just remind us where we are in our overall process. We'll do just a few minutes getting feedback on the key points that you took away from the town hall. If you were in attendance, it'd be nice to just hear what you thought. And if you got a chance to look at the jail tour video, that might be fun to hear what your impressions are from that. And I don't know if Brell's here, but he'd sent an email with a bunch of questions, which we won't get to all of those today, but really good questions. Thank you, Brell. Then we're going to jump into discussion. So what we did is we took all of the feedback that we'd gotten both through the discussions that we've had at the last meetings, and also the stuff, all the comments that were written in on the survey polls. And Marty has really worked hard to try and figure out, like, okay, what would be a potential revised statement that would align with the feedback that we've gotten. So we'll test those out and discuss them and see if those work or what else we need to change. Oh, one back. There we go. Okay, in the blue, you'll see November 17th, you are here. And what we've got next is we have that December 15th meeting coming up to really hear, we'll have the input from the town hall and the survey, at least preliminary results, and then the focus group research that the VITA agency has been doing. So it won't be their final report, but it'll be their preliminary information so that we can have that and look at it. So we'll look at that, and in light of what we've got so far for our report, and Jennifer Moon, who's in the room today too, has been just working so hard on compiling a report, and we're about ready to share that with you all. So we'll discuss that on December 15th. January 19th, we'll really look at the whole body of work, the final needs assessment, see if we're close to agreement. And then if we need more time, we can schedule an additional SAC meeting in January before, do you remember, it goes to council end of the month so that they can review it in February. So that's our timeline. We may, and in fact, when I get to the end of the meeting, we are going to talk about maybe some extra work groups to do some little bits of work that haven't been finished yet. So I'll talk about that at the end of the meeting. So that's where we are in our process. So this is just an open opportunity. What did you all think of that on that town hall? How that, yeah, any insights that you gained? Any just general reflections? Yeah, the tool.
Hi.
Yeah.
So the overwhelming thing for me was the number of people in the community who are concerned for their own safety.
Yeah.
The increase in the number of people or the relative change in the experience that many people are pointing to. And I'm just, taking that into consideration, and the questions that come to my mind, hearing that testimony, what causes this change in experience?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, and then how to translate that concern into constructive action.
Mm-hmm.
There are also some comments that were specific that fall outside the scope of SAC. For example, about enforcement practices. For example, regarding state law on enforcement and actions also of the city. So I'm needing to filter that stuff out and really focus on what I'm getting out of it is that central theme of a significant number of people feel less safe today than they did some years ago.
Yeah.
Speaking for myself, I chose not to. Holly, you invited SAC members, but I chose it was my responsibility to listen, not to speak. So I didn't speak. I have had personal assault experiences in the city, and so I chose not to speak about that. But it did help me put in context the experiences that other people are experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I think so too. Okay, Maya, you're up.
Sorry, I heard pretty universal support for a new jail, which is good. And I heard concern about expense. Those were the two things. I mean, besides all the other stuff that we had to filter that was sort of ancillary, I think those are the two things that I took away.
Yeah, thanks. Darlene?
I was similar to Maya. I've been attending all kinds of community meetings and things for years and been involved with all of the votes and all of that. And two things that I took away was the tenor of the conversation seemed to have really changed. In earlier years, there was a lot more focus on I guess ancillary services, mental health, all of that. And it's not that I think that they're not important and they're not still in the forefront of people's minds. But what I really heard was, we want a jail soon. We want to put people in jail that are hurting our community. Mm-hmm. And that came out loud and clear. And the second thing that really hit me was, I know one of the comments that I heard over and over and over through all these processes is the cost. And we've all known that those costs have risen over the years, supplies have risen. I mean, it's going to cost more. But there was one gentleman toward the end who said 150 million No. 75 million? Maybe. And I happened to sit in the back of the room because I kind of wanted to hear the comments. And all over the room, you may not have heard it up front, but people were like clapping and agreeing with him. And so over the years, as we've talked about the jail, it's going to be a very hard balance to get the costs that we need with an amount that the public is willing to support. And I think right now, in this time frame, with people struggling with bills, with food, with gas, with everything, that's something that we're going to have to be very sensitive about, is how much are we going to ask the public to support? And is there any other way that we can get more support? I'm sure we've exhausted everything, but grant-wise, philanthropist-wise, whatever it is, because I don't know how much the public is going to be able to support. And if we don't get the jail this time, I don't know when we can get out again. And I'm really concerned about that part. So those are the things that kind of hit me.
Yeah, thank you, Darlene. Arlene? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. I was sitting down in the front and listening really carefully to what people were emphasizing. The three things that stood out most strongly to me were they are in support of a jail being built. They are in support of expanding services in our community. That was pretty strong. The way I interpreted the safety issue in terms of what can we actually do to make a difference on that is staffing of law enforcement. It seems to me that that's something that our community can do, that it's doable. Even if it's difficult, it's still possible to get more staff, because I can see from my own experiences how short the staff is in the community, because I don't see them. I don't see them anymore, and I used to all the time. So to me, when things are stressful, as they have been for the last 3 years, 4 years, people are frightened and angry.
Yeah.
And so what's coming out is the fear. And it's understandable because they're seeing more people on the streets, which points in the direction of the issue of housing too.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it's not entirely on our plate, we have the opportunity to advocate for seeing to it that there is increased housing for homeless and for low-cost housing.
Thank you. Okay, we'll hear from Stark and Brell, and then I'll summarize and we'll move to the next section. So
Yeah,
Stark.
so I agree with everybody saying that the overwhelming sentiment was that people don't feel safe in Bellingham, and some were going so far as to say that the walls are going to come down in Bellingham and Whatcom County. And as I sat there and listened to that, it occurred to me that that I think communities across the country are having the same conversation. This is not specific to Whatcom County. It's not necessarily related to our jail and whether to build a new one or not. I mean, I think in general, people across, at least that's what I took out of the recent election. I mean, that was hammered over and over again in all sorts of ads and speeches and whatnot. And as to the cost of the jail, I agree that the sentiment was we need a jail so that we can put more people in there. And secondarily to that we need more law enforcement, or we need to bring back law enforcement who lost their positions to make us feel more safe, to accomplish some change in terms of safety. But I'm not sure people necessarily, when they're considering the cost of the jail, and the cost of increased law enforcement also factor in the ripple effect that has in the system. I mean, that's going to require more prosecutors. It's going to require more defenders. It's going to require more judges. It's going to require more courtrooms. If you're going to increase the numbers of the people that go through the system simply by increasing law enforcement and increasing jail capacity, the system is going to grow. The only effective way to keep those costs under control is to decrease the numbers of people going into the jail, decrease the numbers of people who are getting arrested. And I'm not suggesting that arrests shouldn't be made and that people shouldn't be booked, but we've got to figure out a way to turn the crime rate around in ways that don't just involve jamming more numbers into the system. And I'm not sure that was appreciated by the people that I heard speak at the town hall.
Yeah. It's a really good segue though into really what our discussion is today, right? Because what we're talking about is all of those other elements that are about incarceration prevention and reduction. So Brel, were you at the session last night? Were you able to tune in?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
I was listening online. I wasn't there in person, but yeah, I really fully agree with everything that Stark just said, and it just building off that a little bit. It seems like a task for us if we are going to be putting forward services or programs that can reduce incarceration and prevent it, that we really need to also, maybe this is something that the VITA agency can help with, but there needs to be some amount of public education around how these things will reduce crime, and how getting to the root causes of why people commit crime and solving those problems is not only going to reduce our jail numbers, but it's going to prevent crime. So I think that that those are, we're in a system that generally thinks about jail as being the solution, and if we're going to be putting forward other solutions, there might be some level of community education that'll be needed.
Yeah, quite well taken. So Atul, I've already, we're going to just go ahead. I'm going to skip you and jump to Kristen, and then we're going to shift gears just so we can hear from everybody. Kristen?
My takeaway was a question in my own mind about basically what are we going to do between now and 5 years from now? Like, what can we do to start reducing the jail population? Are we thinking about transitioning people when I think it's pretty inevitable that a new jail is going to be built. It's like, what are we going to do between now and then? And those were questions that were asked by the people speaking up too. It was like, hey, we needed this yesterday, kind of a thing. And so it's time to start doing something, and plan on what are we going to be doing in these 5 years to arrive at this new jail, and what it's going to be like start imagining it.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because that struck me as well. It's like, okay, I'm also hearing about, so what's the interim solution? And it made me wonder, like, should that be something in the needs assessment, is like, in the meantime, what we see is a need for the fact that the current jail isn't adequate. What do we do before the new jail is built?
Well, and I think too, just having that energy behind it, having a vision and being able to paint a picture of what it's going to look like, because I don't have that painted yet in my mind. I can, feel the direction it's going, but it will increase the public's confidence in justice and will cause momentum towards that support, enthusiastic support, I think is the goal. So,
okay, so let's all hold that as part of what we want to be having happening here. Anybody, we're going to really briefly talk about the jail video right now. So shifting to that, did y'all watched it, or a bunch of you I know watched it? Brief comments on how it affected you, what you thought of it, and especially in light of Kristen's last comment of just, how do we help communicate with the public what's going on, and then get, help people understand what the solutions are. Any general impressions? Yeah, RB.
I've not personally been to the jail, but watching the video, I knew that it was bad, but to see the deterioration, it really was heartbreaking, especially the parts where they talked about, like in the kitchen area and in the services area, where only one of the 4 dryers actually works. I think, when we're talking about a facility where Jack was saying that the health department, if this were a restaurant, would be closed down, I think we need to take action now. I think we need to show the public that we're taking good faith efforts to correct these problems that can't be corrected overnight, but that we can take immediate steps. For example, there are companies that we can outsource the laundry service to, that we can outsource the kitchen service to. And I think we should be exploring those immediately, because we have a responsibility to take care of the people in our charge. And I wanted to say one other thing about what we were just talking about earlier. It was heartbreaking to me to listen to so many people in our community who feel such fear. But I think it's also critically important that we as a group, as leaders, message what's really going on. People were spouting off statistics that were factually incorrect. And a lot of these people, several of these people, mentioned a Facebook group. And if it's the one I'm thinking about, it has over 3,000 members. And it's called Bellingham Has Gone to Excrement. Now, I'm putting the word excrement in there. That's not the word they use for their group. But I think for people who make choices to join Facebook groups like that, that's warping the conversation. That's exacerbating the problem. So I think the way to respond to the fire hose of falsehood is the fire hose of truth. So I would encourage everybody here to, have the public watch this video, share it with as many people as you can, because I think what I know of Bellingham and Whatcom County, if the public really knew just how bad that was, they would support whatever the cost is. You don't make a decision on what a facility or service is based on what people think is the cost. You do it on what our needs are. And I think this group has done an excellent job at really deep diving into that. So, like I said, I would encourage us to seriously consider making some of those changes immediately. Thank you.
Well, and it raises that question of communications, like public communications in general, because that we are, working within a context where there's a lot of, the recent political stuff, and then the Facebook pages and like to make sure that the accurate information is out there and widely spread. Your point is well taken. Okay, guys, I'm going to just pick on Kendra because she hasn't spoken yet, and then we got to get into the content. Feel free to write additional comments, though, in our usual system. Kendra, you're up.
Thank you. For the video for the jail, there were a couple places that I would have liked to have seen. I toured the jail about 5-10 years ago. Okay, more like 7. And the electrical room, I think, really needed to be shown. Of course, this is being recorded, so I don't want to state what I saw, but I used to work in the hospital, and OSHA was something that I would follow through with hospital rules. And there is one thing that I noticed that could happen, and the entire jail could burn, even though it's cinder blocks, from what I saw with the electrical, not just the electrical room, but also in the jail cells. I think that if you were to show the electrical area, that's for anybody that is a homeowner that knows the aspects, and that's a fire hazard. That is like extreme fire hazard. So I hope that would be something that would be shown on there as well. Also, one quick thing to piggyback off of what RB was saying for accountability for law enforcement. I really hope that the law enforcement would pay attention to the Facebook pages of Pierce County Sheriff's Office. They do an extreme job of doing an over the weekend blotter, showing what has occurred, so that the community can see what's happening for crime. And I want to commend the Bellingham Police Department for back October when they mentioned the 2-hour time span, where it was that at 11:59 there were shots fired at a homicide call at a party, and then there was an assault at 1:33 a.m. Then another shots fired again at 1:33 a.m. And then the hospital phone saying they had a gunshot victim. These are the things that are happening in Bellingham, and accountability is extremely important. And I think that the crimes are can't really change much of the law that's currently happening. But if people are aware of what's happening in the society, they can understand more about the needs for the jail and all the different programs that are needed, as well as accountability. Accountability seems to be really strong through it all. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Eve, anything else about the jail video or the town hall before we move on?
Yeah, I just want to jump in real quick. Speaking of accountability, I just feel like one thing that the video points to is that there hasn't been a lot of accountability in upkeeping the jail. And I think a lot of the issues that we're facing are because they haven't been dealt with, or they've been ignored, or they've been left aside. And I just think, I want to point to the email that Brell sent out with a lot of really good questions about the video that I think are important to look at. And then besides that, also just like, if this is what happened with the jail we have currently, how are we supposed to trust a future jail being upkept? If we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, how are we going to make sure that, things like mold can be cleaned, things like dryers can be fixed? How are we going to make sure that that doesn't happen with the new facility?
Right. Or what are we making sure? What are we doing to make sure that there's a budget to make sure that the cleaning actually happens at the level it needs, the care, right? It's like you don't just build a building, you have to think through the staffing it and the care. You're raising also the caring for it. That's a great point. Okay, so gang, this is so fascinating. We could keep going, but we should probably get into, we have some work to do today. And that is to look at where we're at with the needs and recommendations. And there's a little bit of heavy lifting. So everybody get ready. We're going to jump into the poll results. I got to figure out how to move this screen. Marty, did you want to just do this first section? The couple slides of where we're at? Is that okay? And I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, next slide, please, Kathy.
Okay, so I just did a couple of quick slides about the vision, values, and goals poll. We got 84% of SAC members responding, and that was really wonderful. Thank you all. We also had 3 extra folks who were IPRTF members who are not on the SAC who responded. And as part of that group, I wanted to just point out what some of you know, but maybe not all of you, that we have over half of the IPRTF participating on the SAC. And that is such a gift and has been, I think, what has helped us really raise the level of our discourse throughout this whole entire process and they brought so much expertise to this group. So thank you all who are serving on both the IPRTF and the SAC, doing double duty. And thanks again for everybody for responding to the survey. The vision, values, and goals levels of agreement with the 4 sections that we have was quite high. And I lumped it together by section. Vision, 89%. The values statements, 83 to 97% agreement with those values. Then we have systems and services goals, 83 to 94%. We're going to start separating those out. I just want to give you a heads up. We're going to start separating things out a little bit more by systems and services instead of lumping those together in order to highlight those those needs that require more of a policy solution or a systems change from those that require additional services. And so I just started to try to make that distinction here, but we won't go into detail with that today. Just wanted to give you a heads up. That's what our thinking is to divvy those out a little more. So you'll see that coming. And then facilities was high. So given those pretty high levels, we're going to hold off on doing any more on the vision, values, and goals until after we get more public input through TVA's work. Moving on to the needs and recommendations. we go to the next slide. Okay, so all of these things are essential, and we have, you know, a lot of agreement about that. Next slide, Kathy. Or whomever's, I assume it's Kathy controlling the slides.
Kathy.
So we, do you want me to keep going, Holly, or did?
Yep, keep going.
Okay. All right, so we are really trying to come to agreement on our needs and recommendations. What are the highest priority needs and recommendations we want to put forward? And we feel like we don't, at this point, we really don't need to do this kind of either or thinking, jail or services. We don't need to pit these things against each other. They all can be held together. We can put them all forward and make a proposal to the council in our work that we would direct staff to work with local, state, and federal agencies and funders. That would include like the IPRTF and state funders to seek funding for all of these recommendations and to press forward as quickly as possible when funding opportunities become available. So as we move through talking about the needs and recommendations and how we want to revise them and what we want to put forward, I hope that it would be liberating to be able to hold all of them together, you know, and not feel like we have to prioritize or rank or choose. But what do we want to put forward as a whole? That's a way of thinking about it, at least for today. We'll talk more about whether we want to do something a little bit more, you know, but if we do want to put some certain needs or recommendations up higher than others later. But as far as today's discussion, I hope we can just hold them all. Next slide.
So you guys can noodle on that, but this
Yeah.
is from Marty and I thinking a lot about this. This is where what's important, especially for our work where we are now, is looking at these needs and recommendations and making sure that you all feel solid about them. That's what's important. So let's but think about that approach, and then here we go. Next slide, I think. Yeah.
This is the needs and recommendations was we had a
good. No, you're in the right place.
Yeah. 82% of SAC members responded to this, and you could go to the next one. So the poll results range from 69% to 97% agreement. There were 18 needs and corresponding recommendations. And so what happened next is went through everything that we have talked about since the beginning about needs and recommendations and the poll results, and just tried to think about what would help us all come to a higher level of agreement on those things where the agreement might be lower right now. So next slide. That is our question for today, is when we look at the proposed revisions to needs and recommendations, what does the proposed revision increase your level of agreement? And if not, what do you suggest that would help you agree with the need or recommendation more? So the first one is on the next slide. And so we'll just, what we're going to do today is go through those needs and recommendations that have a big change, where the proposed revision is pretty big. It's like, well, let's delete this one and replace it with another one. There are a bunch of suggestions on other needs and recommendations that are smaller, like let's put links in so that people can learn more about that program, or let's describe it better. just nuancing the language a bit. And we aren't going to talk about those smaller changes today, just in the interest of time. If you have suggestions about ones we don't talk about today, maybe we'll have some time at the end, or please send your suggestions in writing. All right, so Holly, let's just move through these and everybody be thinking about that question of, does the proposed revision help increase your level of agreement with the need or recommendation? And this first one, it's really a pretty big change here. We're going from a need that's about law enforcement response times to trying to get something in these needs and recommendations that is about a major topic that has come up in so many SAC and SAC IPRTF meetings, and that's about increasing access to competency restoration services.
Okay, everybody clear what we're doing? I mean, if you can appreciate what Marty tried to do, is she mined all of our discussions, all of the comments in the surveys, and did her best job of trying to say, okay, here's what I'm hearing. And you guys are going to say, okay, does this work? What would make it better? I'm going to ask the people in the same way we did before, that we're in a new round. Everybody has a chance to speak. I'm going to prioritize people speaking once before anybody speaks twice. And if you could keep your comments to 2 minutes, okay? Everybody jump in. All right, Michael, what do you think on this one? I love the cat, man.
Yeah,
love
I
the
think
cat.
it's an improvement because the initial need was kind of a little too narrow.
Yeah.
Just on one aspect of, involuntary commitment and then restoration of mental competency, right? It was too narrow. So I think the broadening it to the larger issue is a great improvement, but I think you're missing something because there's two related issues. So one is whether or not someone's mental difficulties are so great that they qualify for involuntary treatment. And then the other half of that is, if indeed they are committed for those reasons, then there needs to be the restorative aspect, right? So there's both very important there. And so I would continue the kind of revision you're doing, but not lose the ITA piece as well. So I think it's great moving off of the too narrow focus, but I think we can redraw the revision to also include the ITA aspect. And then I think it'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you. Bro?
I'm wondering if, I like these changes a lot. I'm wondering if there's a way to sort of pull, by using hand raising, or pull to so we don't all have to comment on all these, but to see if people like the changes. I don't know, just a process suggestion of is there a way so that rather than having to hear from, unless there's specific comments like Michael's, raise your hand if you like this change or something. I don't know, just a suggestion. But I like these changes. I don't really have any comment.
Thanks for that suggestion. Yeah. Wendy.
Just want to make sure all the participants on SAC are aware that the whole issue about competency restoration is very different than having somebody converse with the DCR and being placed for involuntary treatment. That competency restoration basically indicates that somebody's already been entered into the criminal justice system. Depending on who they are and the seriousness of the offense, they may be sitting in jail until that can occur. ITAs can happen. Law enforcement can take somebody to the hospital if they feel that the individual's primary issue is mental illness, not criminal behavior. And that can happen separately. But the other thing that folks are going to want to keep in mind is that both of those systems are tremendously overburdened. We were trying to get an individual into the ITA system and released from custody last week. And there was some communication issues we needed to work out. But one of the things when I talked to the DCR, and she said, it wouldn't really make any difference even if I came down. because there is not a ITA bed in the entire state of Washington that I could send this person to. So both of those systems that are on this slide are very overburdened, but the competency issue is different than ITA under Civil Commitment 7105. So it gets complicated and really fuzzy, even when you work with the system all the time. But it's important people know that those are two different processes.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
So I have a question. Maya, are you
Yeah.
Because I remember you were one person who spoke about the competency restoration services at another meeting. I really want to acknowledge I'm hearing these are kind of two different things, but just curious if the one on the right does make sense for you, if there's anything you would change to improve that one.
Right.
And
Right.
not to put you on the spot.
We don't have any outpatient competency restoration services now. We are not slated to receive those on any schedule. So I don't know. I mean, the ITA portion or aspect, I don't know how relevant that is to a discussion of a jail, because ITA folks aren't going to jail, they're going to the hospital. So, I mean, I guess it's maybe you can, I mean, when people need to be diverted to an ITA, they are, if they're in the jail or if they're in the community. So I don't know. I mean, I think I'd have to, let me think about it a little bit more.
Yeah. Sure. Go ahead, Marty.
I just wanted to say clarifying comment, which is that the recommendation is actually based on work that is ongoing right now, where Perry and Barry are both part of an effort of work group to try to really affect some changes in state policy that are needed in order to increase competency evaluation, competency restoration services. And so that's, I think, that's where that recommendation is coming from. And I don't know if Perry or Barry want to add any clarifying comments, but it's more of a policy recommendation, and rather than the ITA one that's on the side.
Yeah, I could just speak to that just briefly, and maybe Perry would want to chime in too. Yes, that's true. We have a work group that was formed in August as a result of this work we're doing here, actually. So again, great work, committee. That's kind of what spawned this work group. And we've only had 2 meetings. Perry and I did meet yesterday with some folks in King County on a program they have, a diversion program, and we talked to them, and we're going to be bringing something forward for the IPTRF steering committee, just to familiarize themselves a little bit with the program. We're going to be having that in our December steering committee meeting. So the folks on the IPTRF will be able to see that. But yes, the work is ongoing, and we're got a meeting scheduled on the 30th. We're going to be meeting with a foundation actually that put together some of the defense or not defense, but and I don't want to talk too much about this because I don't know a whole lot about it. I'm just kind of a convener of this, but it's a group that is working with the True Blood decision and looking at some funding options. And Perry, could you fill in some of those gaps?
Absolutely. If permission, Arlene, to go ahead of you. At any rate,
Arlene, is that okay, Arlene? He's going to jump ahead of you.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, of course.
Question.
a couple of things, and I really appreciate the clarification that both Chief Jones and also Maya had made. You know, one of the things that, and I didn't see this earlier and should have, is that the original recommendation to give consideration to reduce the response time with law enforcement by, for involuntary treatment admission, absolutely accurate. That is a community-based service that we wanted to take a look at and so forth. The proposed revision, increasing access to competency restoration services, it as to Maya's point, there's an outpatient aspect of that And there's also competency restoration that is more, I'll just say, generally an inpatient, and might fit better in the jail services as opposed to community services is, the point that I wanted to make, because it doesn't, exactly cross over. In this discussion of where this original recommendation, need and recommendation came out of the behavioral health gap analysis team as we were updating the sequential intercept model, I don't think that it took into account, really communication and getting subject matter expertise from our partners, the designated crisis responders in our community in addressing that. And since that point in time, there's also some programs that are being implemented. Folks may be aware of our co-responder program that is being initiated here towards the end of the year for mental health professionals to ride along with law enforcement, with deputies from the sheriff's office. And my point in that is that those individuals have a direct connection and link to our designated crisis responders, which are part of the mobile crisis outreach team. And that will actually reduce that response time. And so, the point that I'm trying to make here is in terms of that original recommendation, I think that there's been some great steps that have been made to address that concern, that that response for possible involuntary treatment admission evaluations is reduced, and and et cetera. So finally, yes, absolutely, what was council member Buchanan was making reference to, really taking a look at the components and aspects of competency evaluation and also restoration within Whatcom County. I think really important component and steps that need to be taken relative to individuals that are currently incarcerated and waiting for an extensive period of time in order to get there. We have some trailblazers with some of the larger counties in Washington that are establishing these programs, and so we have some really great resources to be comparing that to and learning from relative to addressing these needs and services within Whatcom County. So hopefully I answered the question.
Thank you, Perry. That's great. Arlene?
Forgive me for looking at this from a different angle,
But
but these two issues are what I call glaring gaps in our system of services. And even if we are able to increase the time for response, where are these people going to go for treatment? We do not have the beds. And any way you say it, no matter how you say it or gloss over it or hope that this is coming in the future, the fact is that there's no place to take them. And that is not good care. That is no care. The other piece that I think is important about this is that to some extent, it's about justice. It's not just to have people languishing, waiting for restoration indefinitely, month after month. This is not a just system. And it has to do with the state not doing its job. It's the state that's responsible for seriously ill mental health beds. And they haven't done their job. And that's why the various counties that Perry is referring to are trying to establish their own programs. And the funding for this kind of set of services it's a huge amount of money to make a mental hospital with the proper trained people to address severe mental illness. It's not like you can take the counselors in the latest clinic to do this kind of work. So this is just to give it the larger perspective of what's going on in our state.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's I really want to appreciate the people are making the distinction between the approach that's on the left and the proposed revisions also the complexity of the issue. Also, I'm really glad, Jennifer, you're at this meeting because it's feeling to me like we need to build out this part of the report to really explain why this is an issue, why it's a problem, and the different kinds of at a system level where the potential for change might be. So I think what we should do with this one now, because we have quite a few, is just flag that. And that for Perry and Barry, Arlene certainly, and others who may have more to help refine this and really refine what the recommendations and or the needs and the recommendations are is what's needed next. Okay, so let's just put a pin in this one as we know it's got some work to do. Okay, we're going to move on to initial detention and initial court hearings. We had a little bit of a lower agreement rate on this one and a proposed revision on the need and recommendation. And so what do you guys think of this? Can you all see it? Do you get a chance to look at it? And I'd love to hear maybe from somebody who hasn't spoken yet. You love it. You have a better suggestion? Does it increase your level of agreement? Yeah, Kristen?
Yeah, I think that with the broader approach on that first, the one at the top, kind of nails it. It gives you less snags. And the other one, it's pushing, the pretrial risk assessment tool. Is that what it's doing there? It's talking about the judge's job, right? Releasing, pretrial release. Is that what this is about here? Increase the public safety assessment. That's that tool that judges will be using, right?
Yes, that's correct, Kristen.
All right, so this is like a major goal is to give the judges a tool for pretrial release. It just seems like it's a little out of balance since it's such a narrow, tiny thing. It's almost like you're just asking for a grant for that money to get, as opposed to this greater, broader, reducing the people in jail. I don't know. It just, it's not going to, the tool alone isn't going to replace the discretion of a judge. It can help a judge, but it's not really going to be a big fix. I don't think. I don't. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, bro.
I really like these changes a lot. I like that it doesn't, the proposed revision doesn't name the public safety assessment by name in it, and it just keeps it a little bit more broad. And I'd like it even more if it said that it would end cash bail just completely. But I think similar to Kristen's point, like I guess I'm wondering if this is like if this is just a recommendation coming from the SAC. I mean, it's probably mainly a lot of discretion on the judge's part and like a larger policy discussion. But yeah, thanks.
Great. I saw a thumbs up from Arby on the bail issue too. Thanks. Okay. Is there anyone who feels like that this, yeah, Maya?
Yeah, sorry. I mean, they are using that assessment currently and have been for a long time. So this isn't like new or anything, I guess.
That's a good point. So what makes this an important, what makes this an important thing to put into our needs assessment and recommendation that's different, that makes it distinct? Yeah, Michael?
I don't think it needs to be distinct. I think that some of these recommendations can be easier or closer or half implemented or non-implemented. The value in keeping it, I think, is that taken as a whole, all these recommendations have a kind of a comprehensive and balanced approach. And so go ahead and leave it in there to indicate that the breadth and the balance.
Great, thank you. Marty? You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, I'm pondering what Brell said and Arby enthusiastically giving a thumbs up about ending cash bail. It's something that we really haven't discussed, I don't think. And I'm wondering if that's another recommendation that you all would want to see in this effort to reduce the number of people detained pre-trial.
I'm seeing some nods. Okay,
Yeah,
Harriet.
maybe just
And then
put a hand up or a thumbs up or something so we could just see if that's something where there's a level of agreement coming up.
You'd like to test for a level of agreement on the cash bail?
Yeah.
Addressing the cash bail?
Cash
Okay.
bail, like ending, having something about ending cash bail.
Okay, let's see, we'll go ahead and take that suggestion. So we're right now just asking for a thumbs up if you think addressing the elimination of cash bail could be something that we would want to include in this, in our recommendations.
I don't know how to do a thumbs up, sorry.
A hand up is fine. A hand up is fine.
Sorry, hands up. Know your Zoom tools, hands up. So,
Holly,
or a thumbs up like Arby is doing if you want to do the old fashioned way. Okay,
Holly, could I jump in with a comment quickly here?
Yeah, go for it.
This is a national discussion. There are multiple pilot projects with this and state policy changes. This needs a lot of research. This is not a thumbs up or thumbs down. Can we do this by December? I think it's totally inappropriate for us to even be voting on this right now because we're not going to be able to have any deliberative process deciding.
Okay.
I can tell you that this is a likely subject to come up in the relatively near future in the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force. It's a longer range policy change that I don't think we can be informed enough to make a recommendation on.
Got
Good.
it.
Thank you, Stephen. That's what we needed, like a reality check. Okay,
So
but
that might
we
be
also
something.
see agreements on it and know that that's work that's happening, and hopefully we can get involved in that. Those who are interested in that. Michael, are you just doing your?
No, I do want to speak. Since, as Stephen says, we really haven't discussed this, but I think it also would be a mistake to leave it entirely out. Maybe this belongs somewhere as a note in the report near the end of issues that were felt important by the SAC, but were not decided upon, right? Again, I want to make, it'd be nice if the report had a kind of comprehensive view to it. And if this is a unresolved issue for us, at least flag it, and other people are already working on it.
Good. So let's flag that, make sure that gets spoken to in the report. Now we're going to go back to the recommendations that are on the screen right now. What I'm going to do is hear from the folks who have their hands up. And that's Harriet, Eve, Arlene, Maya, and Stephen, and Cliff. And then what I'm going to do is say, is there any way anyone who does not support us going towards this edit? Okay. So Harriet. And I think you're muted. So for folks who are on the stack, you might want to unmute yourself just to speed us along.
I really like the succinctness of the red column need definition. And I would suggest that for the recommendation, especially given the conversations that have just gone on, that rather than being specific about how we would go about that, that we make a more general statement about something explore and implement current evidence-based and promising practices related to reducing the number of people detained. some language like that, so that we're not wedded to something specific as the exploration continues about what's going on around the rest of the country and what is realistic to implement here in Whatcom County, et cetera. So that would be my suggestion for that.
Okay. So the suggestion, so we've gone from the original recommendation, which was pretty specific, to a less specific one. And your thought was we could potentially go even to even less specificity.
Yeah, we definitely need to identify the need, and we definitely need to recommend that action be taken to find the best ways to do that and to make it happen. But that we don't know right now, as Stephen was describing, we don't know exactly what's feasible. And we are already doing the public safety assessment. So, there's a lot of meat in there that needs to be explored.
Great. Eve, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I actually disagree with Stephen, and I think that there is a lot of research and studies and information about ending cash bail, and I would agree with Brell that it would be nice to see that as part of the need or the recommendation for this proposal. Thanks.
The recommendation for this proposal regarding the
oh,
bail?
just having it as part of the recommendation to end cash bail.
Okay.
To reduce the number of people detained in jail before trial.
Okay, so you'd like to see that put back on the table, which is something that we would ask the IPRTF to look at more closely.
Thank you.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Yeah, Stephen.
First, to speak to Eve's point, I wasn't saying there wasn't research. I was saying there's a lot of research, and we would need to parse through that and see how best to apply that in Whatcom County. So that's a process, and I would like to digest all that, and I think the task force would like to digest all that. That's not a thumbs up or thumbs down question at the moment. It was my point. I also want to say that at least the way the proposed revised recommendation is here, to Harriet's point about making it more general, this is directly responsive to two explicit recommendations from the Vera Institute final report. Number one was that there are racial disparities in the way we release and detain people. And the other is, as long as you leave this subjective individual judicial officer decision, you're gonna exacerbate those disparities. And the recommended practice was to adopt an evidence-based assessment tool. So that's work that's been underway. As people have noted, the public safety assessment has already been adopted in the Superior Court. I think the point of the left-hand recommendation to increase adoption was, the hope was that that tool, once we validated its race neutrality and effectiveness in Superior Court, would be adopted by all the courts, because there are a lot of people held on charges from multiple jurisdictions, and other courts use different risk assessment tools. So we were hoping ultimately to get to a unified risk assessment process so that people could be actually released rather than having to have multiple courts weigh in on their own risk assessment tools. So really the way the proposed recommendation is worded is exactly targeted at what Vera Institute recommended that we do, addressing one of the major problems of the jail population. And it also touches on a way that we can make that whole process even more efficient than this would.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're really getting into some good depth on these. We have 6 more to go. So what I'm seeing from the process is what we need to do is just flag where we've got some agreement, flag some areas we need some more development. And then we're going to keep on moving at a little bit of a quicker pace. And I am not going to try and call for any agreement. What we need today is to figure out the content, the insight that people have. So Kendra, please, you're up.
Yeah, real quick, I strongly believe that having a less broad information, that's, okay, so you need to be very transparent when you're trying to build trust. And when you're very broad, it's not specific enough. And it covers up a biased narrative or an agenda that somebody might have. And it's all these little tiny details underneath a broad general spectrum can put in all these little sneaky stuff that people are not aware of what's happening. So I disagree with having it be broad. I like specific, so I know exactly what's happening, because that's what trust is and that's what transparency is. So you need to be very specific with very detailed information. Otherwise, you could just you could take anything that we're saying right now, and there's so many different little layers underneath it that people are not addressing from it. So you need to have it very specific. That's my point. Thanks.
Thanks, Kendra. Yeah, Harriet. Ms. Harriet, you're on mute. Did you still want to speak? Your hand's up, your mute, your video's off though. Ms. Harriet. Okay. So Harriet, hold that thought. If you do get back online, I'm going to come back to you. But what I'm hearing from this is, I think what we need to do is, I'm not hearing any disagreement about just how important it is to have a clear statement about reducing the number of people detained in jail before trial and other case resolution. I am hearing, although we just really need to make sure we're dialing in this recommendation, that it's that right level of specificity, and that it really is something that the IPRTF is vetted and clear on, and that we can all understand the thinking behind it. So check, very good. Let's do the next one. And again, gang, I'm going to move us for about 5 minutes per or less, because we have a lot of these. So you want to be ready, you want to be focused, and here we go. So there's a suggestion here to add a second need or recommendation for initial detention and court hearings. So this isn't one that's in there right now. And that it would look like this, just acknowledging up front that people of color are disproportionately incarcerated, like name it. And then we have a recommendation relative to that need. So any comments on this one? Yeah, Michael.
This is a great recommendation, but there's a small problem with it, which is that if it stands in isolation, it seems to suggest that the reasons for the racial disparities have to do with the systems inside law enforcement themselves being biased and applied disparately, which is probably true. I think the Washington Supreme Court has acknowledged that. But a lot of the issues that lead to disparities occur before and outside of law enforcement. So yes, keep this recommendation, but I think it needs to kind of be introduced in a larger context. The origin of these disparities is just as much outside as inside the system. And so if that's acknowledged somehow, then I think that this is a good and appropriate part of the recommendations.
Got it. Scott?
Yeah, on this one, my recollection is that I think two things. One, I don't know that it's legal to get that information specifically for everyone. And then when we have tried to get it in the past, people don't always tell the truth about what they are in terms of what group they fall into. So getting real data might be very difficult. And I think that comes from a previous discussion from the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force. So maybe Steve or someone else can recall that. But my recollection is we've tried to do this and it didn't work.
Okay, so your concern is that whether or not the recommendation from Michael, I'm hearing just really there needs perhaps to be a little bit more contextualization on the need. And from Scott, I'm hearing the recommendation needs like, is this actually a feasible solution? Yeah, it's something that we can do. Mike,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Anything else on this one? Because we have a bunch more. Okay, let's keep going.
Holly, I wonder if Wendy might be able to just give a little quick thought on the data side of that, if
Sure.
what's possible and what's not.
Yeah, Wendy, do you want to, would you like to speak to that now?
Sure. I mean, we collect that on a regular basis, but the point was made that we basically ask somebody, what do you consider yourself? And that's because we have a lot of folks in this community who are biracial, multiracial. So they get to pick, but they can only pick one. And we right now don't have the capability to be able to do multi, although that's one of those things we'll be looking at in the future. So you can get the information fairly reliably, but if, say, Mr. Lilliquist was looking at somebody, he might identify that individual as being X. And when we ask that individual, they would say, no, I identify as Z. So, you know, it kind of depends. It's not a bad idea to collect it. We can certainly provide it. It's just whether that translates to what everybody in the community or even the law enforcement folks may make, what assumption they may make about the ethnicity or racial makeup of that individual could be different.
Point well taken.
Sensors just more confusing.
Oh yeah, and it goes to that little word in there, adequate. It sounds like the system right now is not adequate. Yeah, Stephen.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention, Holly. The core of the recommendation is about the data systems. There are all sorts of problems to be absolutely sure that you're 100% accurate about the data that goes into those systems. But right now we don't have the systems. So if we were trying to attack disproportionality, we would be hindered by an evidence-based way to approach that. So all of this is, as Wendy's saying, you know, we don't even record some data because we think it's not good enough. Let's build some systems that are maybe not perfect, but better than what we have. In many cases, what we have isn't anything.
Great. Okay, gang, we're going to need to move on. So what we need to shift to right now, because we've got some doozies right in front of us that I want to make sure we can talk about today. So we've got, Kathy, we should be moving to slide 19 on my screen. Are you there? Or everybody, if you got, there we go. Okay, go up one. All right, so there's all of this stuff about the post-incarceration community supports. And so, we lost it again. You guys might need to just look at your own hard copies if this keeps happening. So the suggestion, Margie, do you want to speak to this? What the thought is here? Do you feel prepared, or would you be willing?
Yeah, I think with these three, there was lowish agreement on one part of each, either the need or the recommendation on each of them. But the overall sense is that these may not have been targeted enough to our population that we're focused on, to our scope, or there are community organizations already working on this, or who should be working on this particular, whatever the particular issue is, housing, transportation, and vocational support. And it's not necessarily something that we need to make a recommendation on. And so that's why I was proposing taking these out. Now I'd want to qualify this. We know, I mean, it's come through loud and clear that housing is an absolutely critical issue for reducing the and preventing incarceration. We have coming up what were 3, and I'm proposing 2 recommendations for housing supports for our targeted population, for our scope. And so that would be addressed there. But yeah, it's up for discussion about whether we should continue to include these or not.
So the idea these would still be in the report, but they wouldn't be in the same chart of the needs and recommendations. So let's jump. Okay. And Michael, if you can remember to take your hand up and down. Sometimes I don't know if your hand is in the air, but for right now, I'm going to jump to the next 2 so you can see what the recommendation is for what to do instead that more focuses it on the target populations. So let's click to the next 2 slides, please, Kathy. Okay.
So this one was just about having clinical support within permanent supportive housing, and it didn't say anything specifically about the people who are involved with criminal legal system. And so I took this one and combined it. If you go down, Holly, or sorry, Kathy, to the next one. The next one. So I combined need for more permanent supportive housing with on-site clinical support and intensive case management. So those come together. That's the need. And then made it specific to people with severe mental illness who are involved or at risk of involvement with the criminal legal system. And then the recommendation is, again, it's more of a systems or policy recommendation to advocate for funding to expand or improve this particular type of housing support for people, for the population we're focused on.
Good. And just before we move on, and then I'm going to ask for hands. Let's see the next slide as well. So you can see that if you guys remember, we've been really struggling with this issue of where's the scope, knowing that we are part of the larger system problem. Where's the scope that makes sense for us as a SAC to be working in our recommendations? So that's the needle we're trying to thread here. So let's hear number 3, and then we'll open the floor on both of these. Go ahead, Marty.
The shifts in this one, we're trying to, in terms of the need, to make it just a little more broad and also help people know what therapeutic court members means by trying to define those programs, provide a little information about those programs with the links. The recommendation is trying to get away from the idea of prioritizing a particular population, but acknowledging that unstable housing is a barrier for people to succeed in therapeutic court programs. So it's a pretty broad recommendation, but yeah, it's pretty broad, but trying to get away from that specific thing that people were objecting to, where it's like give priority, or that, you know, we want dedicated housing for this population.
Great. Yeah, this came up last Tuesday night too. Okay, thank you guys. So you might have to, we can flip back and forth on the screen if it's helpful. Also, I'm hoping you're looking at it at your own screens or on paper. And we'll, so Michael, what's your cat's name?
His name is Dragon, but he's not really a dragon.
Yeah, he's the humor part of our day. Okay, we'll take Atul and Arlene and then Brel, and then others who haven't spoken yet, please. Atul?
Yeah, just a clarifying question.
Yeah, sure.
Provided housing instead of the phrase that I'm more used to seeing supported housing. Is there a reason that you use the word supervised housing?
It was a little hard to hear you. I think you asked about the use of the word.
The adjective supervised housing instead of what I'm more used to seeing as supported housing.
Oh, good question. Does anyone know the answer to that?
It seems like an easy fix. That's a good one. I mean, I think that's an easy one to make and makes sense, because that's the term that we were using on the previous slides. Thanks for noticing. Thanks,
Atul. Okay, Arlene.
The population that this is to be for is a population that needs a stable support in order to stay on their path to recovery and stability.
Yep.
So this is the reason for including mental health supervision or, trained supervision. We have experience with housing where there has not been someone to do that job. And it has often failed because people are struggling with either sobriety or stability or both. And so combining, including that support is absolutely vital for this type of housing.
Do you think that that has been adequately represented here or not?
I'm not sure what you mean.
In the combination of bringing number 1 and number 2 of under housing services for at-risk population, in combining numbers 1 and 2, did we accomplish that goal, which is the previous slide?
I don't remember what you wrote, so I can't comment on that. But I know that it's, you know, the support, ongoing support, you know, and we've had recommendation of navigators in addition to enable people to stay on their path. And so, you know, we are doing what we ought to be doing, which is to recommend this.
Right. Arlene, would you double check? Your point is well taken. Could you double check against the language maybe after the call and just email with anything that you think would help reinforce that point? I totally get what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to just, so we've got Brell, Stark, and Perry. And, you know, we do have one more slide that's about facilities, but I just want to flag that folks who haven't yet spoken yet, like Brooke and Teresa and Dawn and Mary Lou, and if you all want to chime in at some point. Doug, I saw you in the beginning. I don't know that you've spoken yet, but love to hear from you all too. Okay, Brell, you're up. Oh, and Erica too. We haven't heard from you today. Brell, you're up, please.
Okay, thanks. So I guess just trying to understand this. So is the idea that rather than having that more general one, there's those 3 that, like 2 slides ago, there was those 3, and then this is getting more specific to addressing the populations of people that are in drug court and mental health court, and also people with serious mental health illnesses. So like, is it, rather than making it so general, it's now focusing just on those 2? Is that the change? Is a question. And another question is, do we have any data on the percentage of people that are incarcerated that are unhoused? That'd be interesting information to inform our recommendations. Yeah, thanks.
Marty, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. I'm going to do the second part first. The only data that we have is from the inmate survey, where the majority of people were unhoused, or they marked unhoused, you know, that they were living in on the streets, or in a shelter, or in an RV, or sleeping with in friends and staying with friends and family. So unstably housed, we might say. And that was the majority. It was up around 70%, if I recall. And so that's all we have on that. And Kathy, if you could just go back to the 2 more slides, please. So the on number 1 here was a general need and recommendation about housing, for like the need for affordable housing, basically. What I was suggesting is that we delete that, and that we really keep the housing recommendations focused on the target population that we're looking at, the at-risk population that we're looking at. And those would be the 2, they would be 2 needs and recommendations. So 2 slides forward and then 3. Does that help clarify? Here?
Yeah, that's what I sort of thought. Yeah, thank you. That
Yeah.
does clarify it. I mean, I guess my response then to all of this is just that, first of all, it'd be great to, if the jail could start collecting that data about, on who's unhoused or unstably housed. But I mean, yeah, I think if this is housing in general, or, housing after being incarcerated in general is going to be where we're going to get some of the most bang for our buck as far as reducing recidivism for all populations. And I know that can feel really overwhelming, but I think even not just making recommendations, but at least taking a step of dedicating some funding, maybe for some of these more targeted populations as part of what we're putting forward, just feels so important to me. And just it feels like it could actually have some real impact on reducing recidivism, if we actually put some money behind some of these recommendations specifically around housing.
Yep, thank you. Okay, Stark, Perry, Michael, Arby, and then we'll shift gears.
Yeah, I agree with those last comments. And I guess the thought that I had when I was reading the slide that was up before you paged back was, why we are targeting only those individuals that are in the therapeutic courts. We got a report that people that were in the LEAD program were about 85% unhoused. We have people that are in the GRACE program that I presume have probably the same difficulties. We have individuals that are on residential drug offender sentencing alternatives and mental health sentencing alternatives and family offender sentencing alternatives. And housing is a huge problem for all of those people in those groups. And again, if they are unhoused, they are more likely to come back into the system and increase those numbers that I was speaking about earlier. So, my suggestion would be to make that proposed revision broader than just those individuals that are in mental health court and drug court.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay. Very helpful. Perry.
Yeah, Stark actually makes a very good point there. One of the things that I wanted to say, excuse me, just being involved in the mental health court and therapeutic courts in general, is the concept and idea is really wraparound services and accountability for the individuals, a fair amount of resources being expended in order to accomplish that. And to pretty much everyone else's point that without housing, the programs tend to not be successful. Because the individual isn't based, there's not that kind of a resource available. And currently there isn't dedicated housing, relative to individuals that are involved in our therapeutic courts. So it's sort of a follow-up on the investment, kind of concept. But, again, Stark makes a good point, relative to, well, then what about GRACE and LEAD and some of the other programs that we're doing investments in as well. So.
Right. Yeah, we're going to have to grapple with this system level thing, and then the populations that are most risk, most likely, and needing the most support during these transition times, or needing support. how we're going to figure that out. Thanks, Michael, and then Arby.
First, I agree with the point that Stark made, that the need for housing is much more than just those who are in those particular programs, and the recommendation needs to capture that. I'm uncomfortable with striking all 3 of those recommendations. 1, for the reason I just stated, and 2, I think we're dropping the vocational piece, right? I mean, when people don't have work, a lot of bad things happen, and many of them can lead to involvement in the criminal justice system. Leaving out that vocational piece. I don't know what the right program is, the right way to connect people with vocational services, but neglecting the employment aspect of reentry is a mistake. So let's not miss that piece.
Thank you. Yeah. Arby?
I want to echo what some of the other folks have said. I don't think we should be too narrow to just focus on people that are just coming out of jail or that are in a therapeutic setting, because the problem is much larger than that. If you look at the data that Whatcom County has collected, historically, 60 to 70% of people who find themselves without a home were last permanently housed in Whatcom County. The real issue here, and this is backed up by evidence, is that there hasn't been a lot of starter homes being built. So I don't mean to get too far off track here, but that really kind of is at the core of a lot of these issues with respect to housing affordability. After World War II, 70% of homes constructed, or right around, were starter homes, entry-level homes. By 1980, that number had dropped to 40%. In 2019, it was as low as 7%. With the average price of a home in Bellingham at $627,000, we're going to see more and more people become homeless. So I think really any effort that we can do as a community to address building codes that are maybe preventing greater density, to focus on incentivizing starter home construction and ADU construction, these things will all help to benefit in a ripple effect. So I would be cautious to just hyper focus in on the people that are just coming out of incarceration.
Yeah, it makes me wonder too if we need a section that's in the report that just talks about the general issues, like you just named some statistics there, RB, about the housing, and so how is the community dealing with housing and homelessness currently? What do we know about that? Seems really like a missing, or needs to be in the assessment. That's just my impression, because that's come out. And you see people are aware of the increased amount of people on the street. It's obvious. I mean, if you listened to the town hall last night, people are very aware of that. So at some level, we need to figure out how to address that while still maintaining the scope of our recommendations. So yeah, thank you. Again, for some folks, I don't know if your hand is still raised, but I'm going to jump to Marty and then Kendra, and then we'll see where we are.
I did just want to talk about scope. I don't know if Dan Hamill's on here. I see there's 2 SAC members who just say SAC member, and I don't know, and their videos are off, so I'm not sure if Dan is still on, but I know he was somebody who spoke up to the fact that there are groups in our community who are really working on these issues is their main thing, and that our recommendations should be more focused. So that he was one person who spoke to that, and that we do not want to work in, we want to make sure that whatever we say about affordable housing and those needs are in keeping with the direction that these other groups are going, and maybe adding support to that, but not conflicting in any way with those recommendations. Again, I do think it's a question of scope too, though, of, is this the group that's putting forward recommendations about affordable housing in general? Or what a specific specifically people involved in the criminal legal system need in terms of housing?
Yep. So I'm hearing that we really need to be able to address it. I think Dan maybe has popped off because I saw his name earlier. And for those of you who still haven't renamed yourselves, it really helps if you do that now, because then we can have you on the list of attendees. That's our secret method, or not so secret method, of making sure that we have a list of attendees. So if you could take care of that, that'd be super. And I'm going to suggest we move on then. That was an excellent discussion. I think we really need to figure out how we're going to scope that. So glad Jennifer, our report writer, is on the call. And I really want to make sure we have time to talk about this shift on facilities. Okay, you with me? Let's shift to the next slide. Okay. So at our last SAC meeting, you remember we really were like, whoa, where are we in this facilities recommendation part? And we had some really good critical thinking there about what is it that we could realistically recommend, given that there are so many unknowns, given that the numbers of the costs are going to influence everything, that the pieces all affect other pieces. So here's our best guess so far. See what you think of this. Did you all take a look at this? I hope before you got to the meeting. Yeah. Okay, so here's a suggestion on a direction to go for our facilities. It's I might even call on some people just so. Mary Lou, what do you think? You got any thoughts? And you can say no, I don't want to talk. I won't put you on the spot. Okay, Dawn, how about you?
Sorry, I'm on a phone, so it's harder for me to get to. I like the proposed revisions. Obviously, I defer to those affiliated with the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office, specifically the jail, with regards to that. But to comment on what I guess the overall thing is, I agree with folks talking about scope. And I know originally at the start of the meeting, folks discussed about, hey, you know, we want to make sure that we're not in a prioritization mode, but at the same time, I think some issues are going to need to be addressed in some kind of priority thing. Otherwise, it's just going to be difficult to maintain momentum with specific measurable goals that are attainable. But with respects to this, I do agree with the proposed revisions, and I think the details would have to be in exactly which experts and what their CV are and how they can, I guess, come together with respects to what both the sheriff's office and the community needs and councils and everybody thinks is appropriate for this facility.
Yeah, thank you. Teresa, how about for you? Your thoughts? Let's jump in. Or Brooke, do you have any thoughts?
No, I'm looking at it and I don't really think that I have any comments on this side.
Okay. Anything else that's come up today that you want to speak to?
No, not at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Teresa, did you have anything you wanted to jump in with?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to fully participate today. My attention is being split.
That's quite all right. Glad you're here. Glad you're listening in. Okay, Erica, I really want to give anybody who hasn't yet had a chance to speak to see if they'd like to weigh in on this or other sections maybe that you just didn't get a chance to chime in on. Slottenbach, anything that you'd like to give voice to?
No, deferring to Perry Mowry is always my best bet, and he gave you a lot of really good insight and knowledge. So I'm comfortable and feel good about the way the conversation's going.
Great, thank you. Okay, Darlene and Doug, either of you have something you would like to say?
Sure, I'll just jump in here real quick. Obviously, I appreciate all the comments, and Wendy and I obviously live this every day when we're talking about the Whatcom County Jail and the limitations and the issues that it creates for our community. So kind of partnering on with what Michael said about some of the services that are provided there, maybe add on number one there, some space for both educational and vocational. I know that's been a discussion within some of the homeless groups about apprenticeship programs and things like that, especially when it comes to, some of the youth services and things like that. So I know for years, Arlene's brought that up, is there's no space for education and vocational efforts. And that's quite frankly, because every space that would be used for those type of things is being used to create space for people that need to be here. But and then when it comes to the location and size, we need to remember when we're thinking about a new facility, we don't want to be going through this exercise 20 years from now. We need to build what's right size now, but also we need to have the space to expand if that becomes necessary. And so that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. You're here. Yeah, in fact, that, I know that's in our goals section. I'm not seeing it specifically in this, so we need to double check on that. Make sure that lines up. Mary Lou, how about for you?
I think that we need to keep in mind that we need to have a good communication with the public to convince them that we want to build what they are asking for is a modern, safe facility equipped to provide inmates with needed services, but not getting too expansive that the cost becomes prohibitive. Because I think from what I gather, what you were saying from the town hall is people are really concerned about the cost. And it's fine to say we don't want to come back here 20 years from now and have a small place. That's why I agreeing with some place that's going to be easy to expand, but also we don't want to come back in 5 years because this jail budget has been defeated again. So I think we need to be really sensible and get it passed this time. As Scott said a few weeks ago at our meeting, if we had passed that jail provision in 2017, we would have had the jail up and running now. And I think we need to have that as our focus.
Yeah, here. Tyler, you haven't spoken yet. Did you want to chime in on these? Any suggestions you'd make at this point? Or just things you think would be helpful to share with the group?
Yeah, thanks, Holly. I think overall, I like how the recommendations acknowledge the need statements. I think it provides good direction to the county council, to the county, on what next steps would be after the SAC report is issued. And I want to kind of recognize what Mary Lou just said is continued communication with the public to ensure that what's being proposed meets what that vision is. And I think that this gets us further along to that point.
Yeah, here. But that came up a lot today, didn't it? Or it just became really clear, both in listening to the town hall last night and in our discussion today, of just the importance of making sure we have a really good game plan for communications is really becoming very apparent. Yeah. Okay, anybody else who hasn't yet spoken, who I missed? Okay, so the floor is open then for anybody else who has a comment, especially on this facilities needs and recommendation would be helpful. I thought I just saw a hand. Did it disappear? It was there, it was gone.
There's Atul and Michael, Kendra, and Arby.
Okay. What was the first one, Marty? Why is it not showing?
Atul, they're I don't know why it's not showing on your screen, but I can see Atul has his hand up.
Okay, great. Atul, go ahead. Oh, they're there. Okay, I had the wrong screen on. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Atul.
So I can't actually see the recommendation number, but I think I have it in my memory.
Okay.
I think I would, on the need, perhaps get rid of the word modern, because I know what the intention here is by saying modern.
Modern, okay.
But the thing is that if we want it to last for a long time, we want it to be modern all 10 years from now. So maybe instead of modern, I'd like to propose a flexible.
Yeah.
The other thing is that what came up in the yesterday's meeting, the town hall, was the importance of maintenance. So I think, I don't know exactly how to capture that, but well-maintained, or, designed to be well-maintained, you know what I'm saying? But well-maintained seems like an important thing to be addressing here too.
Yeah, beautiful job picking up some of those threads, Atul. Thank you. Yep, flexible, well-maintained. We're yeah, thank you for noting that. I'm also laughing at like modern versus what, ancient. It probably goes without saying. Okay, you're up.
Yeah, when you say modern, it kind of like, well, we don't just want it to be stylish for today.
You don't think we should add that in? Really stylish. We want a stylish one. Okay, let's hear Mary Lou, Michael, Kendra, and Arby. Mary Lou, you're up. And you're on mute right now if you're trying to speak.
I think maybe she didn't put her hand down.
Oh, okay. Let's jump to Michael, and then Mary Lou, just chime in if you still want to. Go ahead, Michael.
So I've been waiting for the right time to say this. And this is a good one. There's something fundamentally wrong with what I'm seeing in front of me. And it's not what's in front of me, really, but it's what's not in front of me.
That's part of why we're here. You're right on track. Go ahead.
About the jail.
What's missing, Michael?
Yeah, well, everything we should be doing should be able to be explained in terms of reducing crime.
Yep.
The more we talk about the jail, the less we talk about solutions to reducing crime. What the jail needs to look like has never been that we need a new modern jail has never been controversial. None of this is going to be controversial to anybody. But what we're missing here is the other half of the picture, because a secure detox facility is also facility need. Community-based clinics for mental health treatment or for addiction treatment or for crisis services, those are also facilities.
Yeah.
It's missing half the picture. If you go back to the vision, so much of it is about prevention and reentry, and those require facilities too, different sorts. Luckily, not quite as expensive to build, although frankly, a secure detox facility is probably very expensive to build. I think there are 2 in the state. None of them are near to us. Be great if we had one closer hereby. We're talking tens of millions of dollars, but it's a definite facility need. So what's missing here is half of the entire picture. And it's really I think the reason why the jail levy failed. Yeah, people worried about price, but no one debated the need for a new jail. Not really, not seriously, not the majority. The reason why it failed is it was fundamentally seen as imbalanced. And I'm seeing that imbalance here in the facilities portion. It was well represented in the other portions, but I think it needs something here in the facilities portion needs to address that as well. All those programs have a facility component, a home, a physical place, a location, and sometimes a very expensive home and location. So that's what I'm seeing here, or not seeing here.
Wow, really, really astute comment there about reducing crime. It's reminding me of what we heard last night. Like, what are people asking for? We want less crime. They didn't say, recidivism. They said crime. So from a communication standpoint, and this issue about the other facilities planning team, we should pick that thread up again. I know we've talked about it a couple of times, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. Okay, Kendra, you're up.
Last night at the meeting, I would really like to have Lindsay Clark speak to us. She is the re-entry specialist at the jail, and I think she would have a lot more insight than we do because she is the only re-entry specialist. And I think that'd be really helpful for her to give her point of view because she is knowledgeable, and we're trying to put ourselves in her position, in her shoes, to figure out what her job would be like when she is the one that is expert in that area. So if we could have Lindsay Clark come to speak to us, I think that would help us quite a bit.
Yeah. And maybe ask her specifically if she'd review the draft needs assessment too. Yeah, that was so great that she was there, wasn't it? I'm grateful she came. Yeah, Arby?
Yeah, I'd like to just fully support what Michael just said. And I think given the importance of messaging and communications on this, that really is the heart of how we're going to get this passed. I would be happy to participate in a communication subgroup. Maybe we form a group of people that come together. I'm happy to do that. I think it's critically important for us to succeed at the ballot box.
Far out. Thank you. Brooke.
Yeah, thank you. I did think of something that I wanted to say about the facilities side that we just saw. If we were to build a new jail, I think that it's important that we also prioritize the inmates' comfort and quality of life. That's not addressed on the facilities. It's just about services and more beds, but how comfortable are those beds? I think that's something that we should talk about as well.
Yeah, Thank you. Yeah, I heard something about too, the food, like is the food, somebody said that at the meeting last night. And then, yeah, thank you for that. Teresa.
So sorry that I'm pulled away today a little bit, but one of the notes that I wrote when I was attending was I wanted to echo what Kendra just said about the gal that piped up, the reentry specialist. One of the notes that I took on the piece of paper on the agenda was help her. You know, whatever we can do to help her. Oh my goodness, you know, she is all alone doing the job of many, and I just wanted to do whatever we can to support that gal. So wanted to say that.
That was really, yeah, that was powerful. Maya?
Just to say that, I'm finding that I think we've said before that, oh, well, but we're doing kind of okay getting people into inpatient treatment from jail, and that is not going well again. So Lindsay and the mental health in the jail, the medical in the jail, we have people in there who are waiting literally 6 to 8 weeks to see a doctor when they're asking for mental health medications. That's what's happening. So it's, yeah, it's horrible.
Okay, we're gonna put it, flag this one serious. That's a serious issue. So we'll come back to that. I got a text from Kathy, reminds me by text if I need to say something. Because Kathy, by the way, is it's just so helpful. Okay, here's her note. County committees can't promote ballot measures, right? But SAC members can form their own separate group without county staff involvement because the county can't promote a ballot measure. So RB, to your point, it seems like maybe we could either tease apart what's the nature of the communication, like the scope of it, or we just need to be really thoughtful about how we do that. Yeah, Barry?
That is true that we cannot promote a ballot measure, but the thing is we do not have a ballot measure right now. So communication is still an open thing that we can work on. And I fully support RB's suggestion, and I would love to meet with him to talk more about it.
This makes me think we should go to our next slide. So we had another SAC member had said we may need some more work groups before we really want to be on the same page. We really want everybody in this room to feel solid that they can recommend what this needs assessment. I mean, we've been working really hard and doing great honest conversations and consensus building, just trying to really hear each other and find the paths that make sense. So if we need to do some extra little work groups, we'll figure that out. But I need the slideshow up, please, unless it's there and I'm just not seeing it because of the way I don't understand how this screen works. Ooh, there we go. Okay, here we go, team. So the first draft of the full report, needs assessment report that Jennifer has been working on will be sent to you via email by Monday, November 21st, incorporating our work here today to the degree we are able to pull that off, or at least flagging stuff. And that draft report, it's going to have draft in really big letters on it, draft. It will also be posted on the SAC website or webpage. Really appreciate as soon as you can, because holidays are upon us and it's going to be harder and harder for us to focus. If you can review the first draft and send your comments to our regular email address. So anything that you're noticing, again, we flagged a bunch of really critical things today. This was excellent work. But if you can get into that doc and just start commenting on it, that'll be helpful. Because what's going to happen is, next slide, just get ready. Here we go. We've got, the idea is so here's the draft report. Then we're going to get the input from that the VITA agency is gathering for us, their interviews and their focus groups. Then, of course, Marty's going to put together the report from the town hall, which is online if you guys missed it and wanted to watch it. So we're going to bring that, like, here's the public input. And then we're going to have our meeting on December 15th to try and really think critically about, you know, where are we not nailing it? Where are we still needing greater refinement? There's also the December 19th IPRTF meeting. So they're going to be doing the same thing, really looking at it critically. And then we'll have, after we've kind of worked on that, and this is the area where we may need some work group time. For example, the lovely people who worked on the the vision value goals, we may want you invite if you could come together one more time based on the feedback we got. Do we need to do some final tweaks on those? We need possibly a group who wants to work with Marty and I on the applying the racial equity toolkit. By the way, I want to just flag that it would be really helpful if a couple of you wanted to help us with that before the December 15th meeting. So those are two that we know of. Then, not to confuse you all, but in early January, we're going to have as complete a draft as we can. We're going to send out one more of those survey polls to kind of get where we are now in terms of our level of agreement. And then we'll do actual voting at the meeting on January 19th. If we're still really stuck in any place or we need more refinement, we may be able to squeeze one more meeting in. But we also then have the IPRTF in their position as the Law and Justice Council will vote to basically also bless and endorse the SAC's work. So if we have this is going to be a little bit tricky because it's holidays, but we're all going to do our best. And I also just want to give a shout out at this moment to the planning team and to Barry in particular for just being like, okay, we're trying to do as good and solid work as we can and still keep on our timeline, which is really also important. So that's where we're at. So any volunteers, by the way, at this moment, who would like to help with the racial equity toolkit, this would be a really good moment to raise your hand. Is anybody interested in helping out with that? So Stephen, Eve, are you raising your hand for that reason or a different reason?
I'm interested in working on that and I have a question.
Okay, great. I'm so glad you're interested. Anybody else on the doing the racial equity toolkit analysis that we need to do? Okay, well, if you change your mind, send an email. We'll keep you involved. But Eve and Stephen, thank you so much. Okay, Eve, you had one more comment or question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just after listening to the town hall, just a little concerned about the voices that weren't part of that, and I'm curious if there's a way to see like what the VITA agency's strategy is in reaching poor folks, formerly incarcerated folks and their families, immigrants, non-English speakers. Just like, is there a way to see how they're going to be able to interact or engage with people who might not always be part of the conversation, but that are generally disproportionately impacted by the criminal legal system?
I think their approach is actually on, Kathy, will you check me if I'm wrong? Isn't their engagement plan available online?
I looked that over. I think when it was initially sent out, I was just curious if there was just more information that was a little more specific.
Yeah, we're going to get a preliminary report from them. That's going to happen a solid week before the December 15th meeting. So we won't have their this is where it got that threading the needle problem. We're not going to have their final report, but we're going to have their findings. And we probably will be able to speak more about the specifics. But I think Kathy has flagged here where you can find more about what their approach is. So Teresa. Yep.
Please add me to the list of volunteers to help with that.
For the racial equity toolkit?
Yes, please.
Yay. Okay. Well, gang, we're right at our time. Look at that, 12 noon, boom, boom. You did just so great. I just enjoy getting to work with you so much. And you're all so smart. Really excellent conversation. And obviously we have more to go. We're gonna just keep plugging away because we want this to be right. That's our goal. I want it to be as good as we can get it and know that there's more work ahead. Okay.
Yeah, thanks everybody for being here today, and we will see you all next time, and have a great weekend.
Bye. Thank you.